how our horses move is so important. It's important to their soundness. It's important to how comfortable they are as we ride. And it also plays a big role in their emotion too. So I'm here with Kaitlyn McGarvey, who is our main instructor here at the Honey Brook Stables Farm Campus, and also with Gray Molly. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the step in learning to ride of taking contact and encouraging the horse to move better, of having this feeling of connection through the reins to the horse's body. I'm Callie, you're watching the weekly show here at HorseClass, and I'm super excited to be talking about this topic, the idea of contact, connection under saddle, better movement, and frame for the horse, all these terms with Molly and with Kaitlyn. So I wanted to start with Kaitlyn. This is something that I find is an important part of the learning journey for any rider, regardless of discipline, regardless of what they're doing, because movement is important for all of us. And this, knowing how to communicate well through the reins is such an important part. But it's often kind of obscure in how it's taught. And I find that people have a lot of confusion, and I know you experience this with new students coming in as well.
Yes, so I have developed quite a process in teaching this, and it really first starts from rider's position, which you've done multiple videos on, and that's something that we focus on first. Okay, get the rider following the horse's movement, getting the tension out of the rider's body, allowing the horse to move freely through the rider. So I start with that, and then I move forward into, taking just a nice neutral feel. Okay, I really focus on the arm kind of softly hanging out of the shoulder and almost thinking of it as like a very weighted feeling in the arm. And then we start to take that into the contact or into a connection to the bit and allowing the horse then to move and still maintaining that freedom. I feel like everything you do when you start working a horse into contact, into seeking the bit, it all has to be in with their neutral follow. Like you can't be up here doing one movement and expecting them to take your hand or seek your hand. It has to be within their movement. So then we start to make minor adjustments to help the horse connect to the outside rein once we've established that neutral follow, is what I call it. And again, the neutral follow isn't really coming just from the hand, it's coming from the back. So if you don't have a following seat, you're really never truly able to connect to the bit. So that's why rider's position to me is first off the most important thing to taking a feel of a horse's mouth. And if you don't, you'll notice your hands getting, you're not moving with the bit and the horse is throwing their head and they're getting a little fussy. It's just because the contact isn't consistent and it isn't clear. So starting off with just that nice, solid, following, neutral feel of the bit, then we start to work into, can I start to get that horse to seek the outside rein? Can I get them to sit there and kind of take a little bit of feel of it? And I've also noticed as horses start to learn to come into a contact, they get a little heavier. And that's normal, that's totally okay, because they're starting to say, oh wow, something's consistent, something's there, I can start to meet it. And I feel like as they learn, they almost get just a touch heavier before they start to get lighter, because as they're learning to lift their back and engage their hindquarters and reach, it is a very different weight distribution to how many horses are used to carrying themselves. Okay, and then as they get that muscle developed in that way of movement and the strength within that, then you can start really rocking it back to get the lightness up front, which is all what we want, right? We want more weight carried on the rear than in the front. But it's such a process that you can't really rush. And getting the horse to reach and stay consistent is how you start that. So I like them long, I like them forward, I like them reaching, to then start to rock them back, always maintaining that connection on the outside rein. And you had touched on the emotional state of a horse. I have a thoroughbred mare who is extremely sensitive, and she had me riding very light, and it was very, like, the communication wasn't clear at all. And she would get very fractious, and then the more that I started working her into my hand, and she went from like a little bitty amount of weight and consistency to like, wow, here's my horse in my hand. It's like her whole mind just settled. Her body felt soft. She felt like she could move and be confident in her movement. And personally, knowing like we've had our own little journey together, it was really a wonderful feeling to be able to say, wow, here she is, and we can actually clearly work together.
So I really liked how you brought up the point of it being so much about the rider's body. And I find it always so fascinating how areas of tension that we carry in our own bodies can really start to correlate to what we see in our horse's movement. And it is always so important that we stay aware of ourselves and that we stay aware of the tension. And that tension can change moment to moment. You know, you can find where you're trotting along and everything's flowing, and then your horse has a little startle, and all of a sudden you might tense up again. And it takes, you know, us as the rider releasing that and finding that fluidity and that flow and that energy flow in our own bodies before the horse is going to be able to find it in theirs.
Yes, I feel like the faster that you can get back to that space, the more seamless things are. Mm-hmm. You know, and when you are in a good connection with the bit, you can almost feel those things happening and redirect it like almost instantly. Okay, so like when you're riding around with no contact, you don't necessarily have a feel for where your horse is going. Mm-hmm. Okay, but when you're there and you're communicating with the lightest requirements, you can almost shape it before it really even goes anywhere outside of where you want it to go. And that's what I feel gives riders a clarity in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. is having that feel. And again, that's a horse between the aids, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. You know, can I work every aspect of you and shape it?
What we want to do next is give you an exercise that you can practice right away to begin understanding this feel, developing this feel for yourself. So this exercise that we want to show you, as you can tell, Kaitlyn dismounted, and we have a set of reins here that we're holding between us. And Kaitlyn's going to walk you through an exercise that we learned from our another mentor and an instructor here at HorseClass, Angelo Telatine. Angelo teaches the Building the Show Jumper class here and is an incredible instructor and trainer. So this is a great exercise to practice with a friend. Doesn't have to be a riding friend. You can grab any friend, someone at home even, to practice this with you. And go ahead and explain what we're going to do here.
Okay, so Callie, I would like you to start off by just, applying a nice movement there with your hands. And I want you guys to notice how my arms are following her movement, okay? This is where we spoke about having a following hand. Okay, I'm following her. You notice I'm allowing my arms to move. I often think of it as a very weighted arm. Okay, now, once we start to hold tension, okay, Callie, I just would like you to stay at the same movement there. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start to tense. Okay, this is where I'm locking my elbows. Okay, and look, that's my horse's there. I'm now back to normal. Okay, so that's what my horse is feeling when I lock at my arms. Okay, and people tend to say, oh, I got to keep my elbows right by my rib cage, which is the case, but you also have to let it move. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you notice, my elbows are still by my rib cage. Okay, so this is where we would start to then communicate more detailed conversation with the horse, okay, out of this neutral follow, mm-hmm. all right? Because what happens is when we get locked and they feel that, we're releasing and we're taking and there's no real clear communication at all, okay? So I find that this is a super great place to start. Now, the other thing that I want you to notice, and this is how your friend can help test the subject, start mixing the movement up. Don't let it be consistent. Yep, you can move one arm like randomly, okay? And you see how the contact's still staying? There's not a loop, okay? That is because I'm following. My arm is weighted and it's just following the movement of the horse. Now, what also has a tendency to happen, all right, now go back to the normal movement. Okay, now I'm gonna kind of anticipate, which is I find a lot of riders do this at first. Okay, now stop moving, Callie. You see how I wasn't following you, because they get in this action like, oh, I have to give, and they're really not connected, okay? So it's a matter of just letting that arm weight, follow that bit, okay? That's really gonna be the starting point of seeking connection.
Very good. It's amazing how even just being in this place, and it's nice to switch back and forth when you're practicing with your partner, because being here is the one creating the movement. Like when you stopped your hands, it was abrupt even to me, you know, and this isn't a reins attached to a bit in my mouth. These are just in my hands, and it already is like kind of abrupt. Another question that we get is if you ride in, say, a bitless bridle, is this any different? And when we're referring to the contact and going to the bit, you can think of this the same as your contact point on a bitless bridle. Of course, there's always some variance, just like we've got different types of bits. Sometimes the bits you don't want to ride in contact with, for example, on leverage bits. And if you're riding in something like a hackamore, you wouldn't want to have contact with that either. But if you're riding in a standard bitless bridle, like a side pull, it's going to be essentially the same. We have a lot of our school horses here that do go in bitless bridles, side pulls, etc. Of course, we understand that this was just a brief overview and one simple exercise to cover a really broad topic. And fortunately, we have many resources if you're interested in going further and learning more about this. For one, many of the terms that we used, such as collection or frame or a horse coming on the bit, are often poorly defined. In our course, ABCs to On the Aids, Wendy Murdoch teaches exactly what these mean with a deep dive into the anatomy, the movement of the horse, and how to recognize good movement from poor.
So many people understand the terms, but they don't know what they're looking for, the specifics of what gives you the clues that your horse is going in the right direction. And that's really one of the things we emphasize in the On the Aids course, is to help you see what we see. What I see when I look at a horse that tells me, yes, this horse is going in the right direction, or no, I'm missing a piece. And that's the first step, awareness to making a change.
We have many other learning resources, both free and premium, at horseclass.com. And also, you can now come to our farm here in Honey Brook, Pennsylvania, and you can work with Kaitlyn in our private intensives. We have an incredible group of school horses, including Gray Molly, and we have a beautiful facility with indoor and outdoor arenas, and we love to have guests come, experience our farm, and get to really spend 2 days just immersed in learning one-on-one with Kaitlyn. So for more information on Horse Class, on our courses, and on the private intensives, follow the links down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.